Welcome to College Compass by experts at scholarship.org. For the past 42 years, the staff at the George Snow Scholarship Fund and scholarship.org have dedicated themselves to empowering young people and ensuring that they have access to the resources they need to succeed in their educational journeys. In each episode, we'll sit down with experts to provide practical advice that will help students overcome challenges, thrive, and maximize their college experience. My name is Tim Snow, and I'm president of the George Snow Scholarship Fund and scholarship.org, and I'm going to be your host for today's show. Today, we're going to dive into the essential topic of interview skills. We know that these are crucial for both scholarship interviews and job interviews. At the George Snow Scholarship Fund, we conduct interviews with all of our scholarship candidates, which gives us valuable insights into what makes an interview stand out. So in this episode, we're going to share best practices to help you feel confident and prepared, whether you're aiming for a new job or for a scholarship. The experts joining us today are Christine Sylvain and Dr. Natalie Capiro. Christine is the founder and executive director of the Path to College Fellowship, whose mission is to secure the acceptance of as many high-achieving, low-income students into top-tier universities as possible. At Pathway to College, Christine and her team have experience preparing their students for scholarship interviews, just like those we conduct here at the George Snow Scholarship Fund. Dr. Capiro is our very own Director of Coaching and Career Development at the George Snow Scholarship Fund. She works directly with our scholars during their college years to help them acquire internships and job opportunities. Once a student receives our scholarship, they can rely on Natalie for advice in all areas of college life. She brings a lot of real-world experience around interview skills, and so she's going to be valuable to us here today. So with that, I want to, Christine, I want to ask you first off to tell us about your program, Path to College.
Well, thanks for having me today, Tim. It's great to be here. So Path to College runs a 3-year program for students coming out of what we call overlooked and underestimated communities. We provide each student with a one-on-one mentor who's a professional who's been to college. We do soft skill curriculum, we do tutoring, and a very robust community impact, civic engagement, leadership development program. On top of that, we do college advising, we do college tours, and career exploration, including internship matching. So our goal is not just to help with tactical college prep, but also to help develop the candidate profile so that after the 3 years in our program, despite their many challenges, and our kids have many, they are the standout applicants to selective universities, and they get those full rides. And in fact, 60% of all of our graduates have gone full ride scholarship to a top-tier school.
That's amazing. And I can state from experience that the young people coming out of your program really do stand out.
Thank you.
They've received, many of our scholarships, and we really appreciate what you're doing for that demographic and helping them in the way that you do.
Well, we couldn't do it without you, so thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, and then one of the things that I had not heard about, but somebody told me about a speed interview night.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that?
So part of the process of taking a student who might come out of a community of extreme disadvantage or extraordinary challenge is understanding that they have not necessarily had the village around them who have had the interview experience. So they don't have the aunts and uncles and the friends of parents to go to and say, hey, how do I do this thing? And so we start early and often, and we host a wonderful event in partnership with Related at City Place, where we shut down Rosemary Avenue, and we have like a football field size interview arena, basically, with 100 students, 100 professionals in the community who show up. Our students get new suits, new professional wear through our partners, and they're there on a Friday night, which is very rare for teenagers, right? Ready to practice their interviewing skills. And so we do multiple rounds, and it's rapid fire, and the idea is repetition, right? So I'm an educator, historically, and it comes from this understanding that kids, in order to increase their confidence, which is kind of the number one thing that they're lacking. They're not really lacking ability. They're lacking know-how, confidence, and experience. So once they do that a number of times, they kind of shake off their nerves. And by the end of the night, they're at ease and they're talking about what they want to do and who they are and where they come from. And they bring that authenticity that interviewers are often looking for. So it's an incredible event and people just rave about it.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Like I said, I've not heard about it before, but man,
You'll have to join us next year. It's
I
the first
know.
Friday in December every year.
Okay.
It is a beautiful,
That sounds beautiful.
evening.
Wow.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Well, let's get right into it. I'm going to just throw out some questions for you guys. I'll let you fight over who answers it.
Sure.
And then we'll just go through this process. And I know that between the two of you, you're going to give our listeners a lot of really valuable information. So I guess let's talk about preparing for an interview. I would just ask, like, what are some things that students can do to get ready for an interview?
Do you want to take this one?
Sure. So firstly, thank you for having me. This is just hearing you. I'm like, wow, this is so much fun. This is, I already feel so inspired already for the work that we do and the work that you do. So I appreciate teaming up with you here today. I suppose the number one thing, you actually brought up a wonderful word, that confidence piece. I truly believe that is something, and this is actually a conversation I was having last week. It's really human to lack confidence. And I know that may not make sense right away, but that's something that we often don't focus on firstly is our confidence levels. We just focus firstly on what's at hand. So it's that interview. I have an interview. What does that mean? Am I going to be good enough? So automatically a student or a young adult is going to put themselves in that, am I being tested? Am I, which is, am I good enough? So immediately you're already questioning yourself. So to prepare, in my opinion, for an interview firstly, is to understand the fact that you are valuable enough and put that in your mindset that you were asked to be there. So that alone will automatically allow a student, a young adult, to think, well, I was kind of chosen for this. So right there, you just boosted your confidence a tiny bit. So I think that is a beautiful word you mentioned, and that to prepare for an interview is to almost just get back into that mindset of, I was chosen to be here, so let me remember who I am. And that may start with a resume. Do I have a resume? Because often if you don't have something on paper, you really don't know how much you've accomplished. So you might want to start there.
I think you're spot on. And as far as, building that confidence, I think students really need to be in the mindset of the interview is not just the interview. You're interviewing with people all the time. You never know who you're meeting in the grocery store, who you're meeting at the post office or at the doctor's office. And you should really think about, how am I presenting myself every time I leave the house? And so I think in order to show up on interview day and have that confidence, you have to be working on yourself to build confidence. You have to have some internal purpose of, I want to grow in this way. I want to have this experience. I'm going to volunteer here, or I'm going online and I'm doing an EDX course on data analysis because this is an area that interests me, or I'm reading about this thing, that I have areas of interest so that as I'm meeting people, I am authentically showing up with my interests. And I believe the right people will align. And once you have that, like, this is who I am, this is where I'm coming from and where I want to go, you are grounded in who you are. So the next phase is just learning how to speak to it, right? And really, like, reflecting. And like you said, I belong here. Sometimes it's affirmations. A lot of our kids, they have, they're kind of lacking that exposure, and they have that imposter syndrome, which I don't like to put on them because not all of them do, but a lot of them do. And so it's maybe I need to practice in the mirror, right? And really give myself that affirmation of, like, you got this, you can do this, you were made for this. I'm a bit of a coach. I grew up playing soccer and sports.
Oh, there you go.
So, it works. And that repetition, like, you begin to believe yourself. But of course, there's also the practical side of, like, research the company, right? Understand how your qualifications align, and always speak to the impact that you've made, whether it's in a school club, at home. A lot of students don't understand that their work at home, taking care of siblings or cousins, cooking, helping their families with translations. To me, that is the high achievement that's not on your transcript that you want to speak to and be proud of. So there's a lot there, and I think the more a student can speak with a mentor, with a trusted adult, and truly, students really need trusted adults, but the more that they can kind of see themselves reflected back of like, wow, that's awesome. You did really well at this project or whatever. They build that confidence as well. So I think it's multi-pronged, especially when you're entry level. You don't just come out of the womb like, yeah, I'm ready to like my personal
going
pitch
on
is
an
ready,
interview.
and, but of course some people have personality, but everyone needs to practice this. And
Absolutely.
I think if you're a student and you're starting out, being humble and asking for help, people want to help you. That's a good place to start, but start early and start often.
Yeah. Well, and I think like one of you guys just mentioned, they feel like it's a test, and I try to communicate if I'm doing the interviewing, that really I just want to, it's not a test. I just want to get to know you better. I already like you because I asked you to be here. And so like you had mentioned, being authentic, I think things, like making eye contact, and it is intimidating. I mean, we see that in our kids and how nervous they are when they come to interview. And we ask our interviewers to just do sort of a softball question as one of the first questions. Right. Just ask them, why are they going to that college or something like that, and just to kind of get everybody a little bit more comfortable with each other. But it really is not a test. It's just really just almost trying to make a new friend, and but it is. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay it, because it is definitely intimidating, especially for students going in and interviewing. Oftentimes, at least with our organization, interviewing with adults.
For the first time.
Yeah, for the first time.
And adults that are not necessarily like them, or that they've been exposed too much, I think also is an element.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a good point. And we talked about preparing for the interview, and for me, the interview really begins before the interview. Right. And actually, I'll tell you. Well, maybe I shouldn't tell you a secret, but it in our process, it really does begin before the interview. And so, is the student on time? When we called for the interview, were they polite to the person that was calling them and trying to set it up? Were they cooperative with it? And we make notes of those things. And so, you're sort of always being interviewed, I guess. Right. And we've even had students that, because we used to do our interviews in our office, and it was kind of hard to find, but and I just thought this was, so proactive. They literally came to our office the day before the interview because they were worried about, am I going to find a parking space? Do I know where this place is? And all those things come into play. And imagine if you don't really know where you're going, you can't find a parking space, you're almost guaranteed to be late. So that kind of advanced preparation really goes a long way.
And if you're late, you're automatically decreasing your confidence levels walking through the door.
Right.
So if you're not 15 minutes early, I like to say, you're late.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some of the things that students can do to kind of project themselves as confident? So like, do you guys have any tips like I mentioned eye contact, but anything like body language or anything that you tell your students?
Certainly.
I was going to say the number one thing is, and this might sound a little elementary, but to sit up straight, maintain good posture even while sitting down, whether it's a virtual interview or an on-site interview. Maintain good eye contact, proper eye contact, and those two things alone demonstrates that you are there, you are present as the interviewee. And then I guess those are the two that kind of pop into my head automatically.
Absolutely. And I think students certainly deal with nerves. And I think any person does, right? When you're doing something new, when you're going into a situation, you're not really sure how it's going to go, and you really want a certain outcome, that's human nature. One of the things we tell our students is that, the nerves in your body, they're really just excitement. They're not like this negative thing. So let's reframe your thought process there. And also, it's energy that's stuck in your body. Can you release it? can you do some jumping jacks, like in
Okay.
the hallway before you walk in, and do some deep breathing and just transmute that nervous energy into kinetic energy, because at least you know what it is, right? And it's just you're excited, and that's positive.
Absolutely.
So walk in excited, walk in smiling because you're excited.
The power pose.
And the
The power
victory pose.
pose.
I
Yep,
am a
yep.
What is the
big
power
fan.
pose?
It's like Superwoman.
Yeah.
And you look in the mirror and you're like, here I am. I'm ready to win.
There's psychology
There is
behind this. There's
psychology.
science.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
See, I
All of
learned
it.
something today.
Yeah, I mean,
not
do
know
it.
about
It's
that.
just fun. Like, make yourself laugh.
Yes,
Right?
that's true.
Right.
And it takes the edge off, so to speak. So
When you do meet the interviewer for the first time, smile. Smiling alone tells your brain that you are happy. So that will boost your levels of confidence right then and there as well.
Yep.
So there's a lot of little tricks
and dress to
physically.
impress.
Dress to impress,
And
even if it's virtual.
Even if it's virtual, because you feel it. And again,
Yes.
it's the psychology. And I think, it's polish over price tag. So a lot of students, you
Right.
might not be able to afford the most expensive clothing. And I know I'm a mother, and I try to find quality clothing and not spend a crazy amount. So it's showing up, knowing that your clothes are clean, that they're pressed, that, go with simple, classic colors. Like, don't overthink it. Just put
Yeah.
on the black and white and show up and know that you look professional. And so you're halfway there too. That polish is important.
And that was the next question or where I was going to go next is really some of our students, I'm sure some of your students maybe don't own a suit or even a tie for
Right.
that matter. And so I think your point of just being neat and clean is really an important
Right.
one. And I think, I know that we educate our interviewers on the fact that some of the kids may not have the luxury of having a jacket or a tie. But as long as they show up looking neat with their shirt tucked in and, appropriately dressed, you can, that's all anybody's really asking for.
Absolutely. And I also have to shout out some amazing community organizations locally that help people find professional wear. Dress for Success
Right.
for women, for
Yes.
instance, is a great one. And I'm not sure of one exactly equivalent for men, but if you call local fraternities, local Rotary clubs, and you say, hey, I have this interview and I need a suit. Again, there are good people in this world, and you just have to ask for help. And often you can find it, but you have to leave yourself time to find it.
Yeah, well, that's for sure, and that's good advice. For our scholars who are going for job interviews, we actually have a scholar closet,
Right, there you go.
which can give them nice clothing for a job interview. Okay, well that's good. So let's see here. We reached out to our selection committee, and some of the things that they said that was important to them when they're looking at a student is enthusiasm,
Right.
and passion, and I would even add in there gratitude for the opportunity.
Right.
And certainly to try to communicate that to the interviewers. So, all right, good. Well, we're covering a lot of ground here. Let's see. Any recommendations for students or candidates that are going to interview virtually?
Well, certainly you need to test your tech ahead of time.
Right.
And I don't suggest doing an interview at like a Starbucks.
Oh, no.
But maybe it's a library and you can rent a study room. Maybe you can do it at home, possibly, but possibly you can't. So I'm really trying to find the space ahead of time that the Wi-Fi is going to be strong, that your computer is going to work, that you have it charged. It's like the simple things that will get you sometimes. And then, double check the link. Sometimes links cross. I don't know. Weird things happen.
Yeah.
So double check it and just make sure that you have the software updated if it's Zoom or Meet or Teams. Sometimes you have to download a software and you don't want to be the last minute trying to get that done.
Right.
That's unprofessional.
I was just going to say it's important to do this, maybe even the day before.
Right.
because you don't want to be that person, as you just mentioned, at the very last moment and something doesn't work, because you could be a tech-savvy wizard and at that last moment, and that's what we don't want to happen. So even the day before, just setting up, knowing where you're going to go if you don't do it at home. Even maybe in your high school, they might have rooms that you could go in. Absolutely, absolutely. So knowing your location, firstly, testing the tech, as you mentioned, and dressing the part.
Right, you still have to
Dressing the part, and making sure your camera's on and your microphone works and it's not on mute.
And then the other thing that I find students do is sometimes they don't want to be on camera.
Right.
And they're just kind of shy. And I don't know if it's coming out of like the COVID period where the kids were home alone and they were just a lot, like no one could force them to get on camera.
That's a good point.
I just wonder if they don't understand, how it looks to someone who's interviewing you. And so, you got to be ready on camera, make sure you have good lighting.
Right.
There's a lot of little things that you can do to ensure that you come across the best way possible. But I also want to caveat all of it with, we're giving you a lot of tips. It might feel overwhelming. And if you mess up on any of these, just asking for grace. I appreciate your grace with me as I'm getting my tech set up. Like those little, acknowledging that you're not quite at your best in this moment, it goes a long way.
Oh, for
And
sure. Yes.
Perfection is not possible. It's all about progress.
Well, that's good. That's good input. We touched on a couple of these things, but one thing is, making sure your background is neat and free of distractions. Hopefully you're in a place where your cat or your dog's not running in front of the camera in you, or your little brother or sister.
Exactly.
And then the sound is, unfortunately, that's something that, you just want to be in a room that doesn't have a lot of background noise or a lot of echoes or distractions in that regard. And one of the things I read was that the camera should always be sort of at an eye level if you can do that. All right, well that's all good information. Do you guys have any tips for how a student should wrap up an interview, or how they should leave a lasting impression, or how they can leave a lasting impression?
Yes. Do you want me to jump in first?
Sure, go ahead.
Certainly, a firm handshake and a smile and, gratitude for the opportunity, like you mentioned earlier. But for me, the most important thing, even when I'm hiring, is that follow-up email.
Okay.
The thank you for the opportunity. I enjoyed talking with you. Perhaps it's, these are some other samples of my work that I thought would be helpful for you to see as we were discussing, and here's a follow-up question, and mostly I'm really excited for this opportunity. Please keep me, in the loop. And if you don't hear back, because when you're hiring, or often there's a lot of people to contact with, like, don't hesitate to follow up again in a week or two. But that follow-up is just so important.
I truly believe that the follow-up, for lack of better words, can make or break the situation at hand, because we have to remember that for every interview, there's someone behind you that's interviewing as well. And with that being said, you do want to stand out. You do. You want to surely understand your value, but you also want them to have a lasting impression. And what that is, as you mentioned, firm handshake. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You can't say it enough. Maybe not that many times all at once, but you definitely want to demonstrate gratitude. And this might sound, no, this is something that I still, to this day, tell students that would really set you apart, and that's a handwritten note. Mm-hmm. And we can't always do that. You may, if it's a room of 5 people, that may be a little difficult. We don't want to put that pressure on a student or a young adult, but that will certainly set you apart if you leave an email or send an email. And I would do that almost immediately if you can. And second to that, there's nothing greater, in my opinion, than to receive a personalized handwritten note even today. I know that many don't do that anymore, but if you receive that, I've received them. I know employers who have received them, and they say thank you for the thank you, and that, I believe, really leaves a lasting impression as well.
It certainly does.
Yeah, and I've been in a lot of interviews, and a lot of times the interviewers will kind of close with a statement of, or a question. What do you have a question of me, or is there anything that you want to know about the George Snow Scholarship Fund? And I would ask students to be prepared to answer that question.
Absolutely.
And if you get asked that question and you can't respond to it, I don't know that's a plus for you. And even if it's not like a question, like if you get caught off guard that way, maybe you reply with some sort of remark. Well, I just admire what you guys are doing. You're helping young people in the community like me. But be prepared in some manner to answer that kind of a thing.
Yes, and it goes back to the tip we were talking about before, research the company.
Right.
If it might be a scholarship interview, but it might be for a job. And if you're going into a company and you're not paying attention to what they're putting out, new campaigns, new products, maybe it's a market trend that's happening. And if you can speak to that in the interview, hey, I saw this in Wired magazine and I thought it was really interesting. Is that reporting true? Is there a different aspect of it that I would find interesting? Showing curiosity. For me, that's something that I look for in every human that I come across. Are you curious?
Right.
Are you humble and you're curious to learn more? I want to work with someone like that.
All right. So do you guys have any tips for, obviously, from our perspective, we wish we could help everybody that we interview, but we can't. We just don't have the resources for it. And so there's going to be disappointment with the folks that we cannot reach. And do you have any tips about that, on things that might help them overcome that disappointment?
I would change the verbiage if you're coaching or if a mentor or a coach is having that moment, or a parent or a friend with a scholar or a potential candidate who did not get the position or the scholarship. Surely that's a big bummer. That's something that they automatically feel a sense of, I wasn't chosen. Am I good enough? Did I even deserve it? And no one should think that way. If I were to coach a student that way, I would attempt to coach them through reframing that thinking, and really look at it instead of a disappointment, an opportunity to get closer to their next big goal. And while this was perhaps one of their greatest goals, was to obtain this particular scholarship or the job that they've been wanting their whole lives, that doesn't mean that will be forever. This was simply a stepping stone, a practice cycle, an opportunity to meet new faces, go through the process. That's just getting them closer to the next step. And once they reframe their thinking and they seek that next step and get away from the negative disappointment, which, again, you have to be great. You said the word grace. They have to be gracious with themselves and take a moment in that. So there's nothing wrong with feeling disappointed, but to rewire those neurons and thinking, what's next for me? And I had this opportunity to practice.
They say rejection is really redirection.
There you go.
So maybe it's leading you to something even better.
There you go.
I was talking
Beautiful.
to my stepson the other night, and he's been interviewing. He has his master's. He's graduating with his master's in mechanical engineering.
Oh, congratulations.
He's exceptional. I mean, the kid is exceptional, but he's gotten a lot of rejections. Mm-hmm. And he was just saying, oh, man, these rejections, they're killing me. And, of course, they do, because you're telling yourself a story about them. Right? We all have an internal narrative, and the more power you have over your internal narrative, the more successful you will be. And so I just said to him, I was like, well, what if rejection is your goal? What if you decided that you want to get at least, 15 rejections from really high-level places, and maybe within that you'll get like one good one. And it's not that you're going for the rejection, but just that, like, I have to apply to at least as many that I get this many rejections. Like, maybe I have to apply to 20. And I'll get 5 offers. So just, again, the reframing.
And asking yourself, what did I gain in the process? Not what did I lose, what did I gain in this entire process? Because there's a lot to learn there in and of itself if you shift the question and change the thinking. And then all of a sudden it's, well, I learned this. I got to meet so-and-so. I got their business card. I got great feedback. So there's ways to think about the positive that'll just allow you. You have to have that growth mindset. But once you get there, there's always the next opportunity.
And don't be afraid to ask for the feedback too. People are
That's
more
a
than
great
happy
point.
to give it to you.
Yeah.
That's a
that's
great
how you
point.
grow.
And I would say don't give up. I mean, I look back on some of the things that I really wanted and didn't get the first time I applied for something or wanted to be included in something. And just so many times, the answer is no the first time, but don't give up because, if you're passionate about it and really have, excitement, that's going to come across and you will get, the acceptance letters or the letters of commitment for the scholarship, but you just got to keep trying. It's not a straight line to success. And Lord knows I've experienced that in my life so many more times than I care to remember. But just keep at it. And listen, again, we get back to that statement of you got an interview for a reason. They were impressed with you. And so, like Natalie says, learn from the experience. Ask yourself what you could do better next time, maybe. And to Christine's point, ask the organization what you can do better, and that'll set you apart too.
Right.
And then I've often just really admired people that even with the rejection letter, they'll write you a note saying thank you for the opportunity.
Right.
And that was very meaningful to us. And you never know, because you might do that, make such an impression on somebody, and then somebody decides that, I'm not going to go to school this year, I'm going to take a gap year, and they kind of give up the scholarship, and now that organization's got to find somebody that to replace that person with, and guess what? You've really
Top of mind. Yep.
Yeah, you're top of mind. That's a good point. Well, as we wrap up this episode, I want to thank you, Christine, and Natalie for joining us today. Your insights, are so invaluable to our listeners, and we're so grateful to you for sharing that with all of them.
This was fun. I learned from you.
So in closing, I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to College Compass by experts at scholarship.org. In our next episode, we're going to explore valuable advice for future college graduates, covering everything from career planning to navigating life after college with confidence. Stay tuned. And in the meantime, you can learn more about us by visiting scholarship.org. For more tips and updates, don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram and LinkedIn at George Snow Scholarship Fund, and on Facebook, TikTok, and X at Snow Scholarship. And as always, we look forward to guiding you through your educational journey.